Hello everyone and welcome back to a brand new video. Now obviously the Premier League season is coming up, it's days away, and a lot of people have been giving their Premier League predictions, so naturally I decided to jump on the bandwagon and give my Premier League predictions. Now this is something I do on a regular basis, on a yearly basis. I always do up a table of Premier League predictions. I made that football video the other day. It seemed to be reasonably popular, got a better response than I was expecting, so I thought that I'd do another football video and do my predictions, and not only can I really put my thinking to the test and my football knowledge to the test and see how good my predictions are and see if I get it right, but also I can laugh at the end of the season about how bad my predictions ended up being. I'd like to think I'm pretty familiar with all the teams and that I can predict each thing, but naturally I'll probably be way off the mark because I would have not predicted Watford or Bournemouth or Norwich to go down last year. I don't think I predicted all three of them to go down. I think I predicted like Sheffield United, I think, and Villa and Newcastle, I think, were the three I predicted to go down. So that just shows how little I know about football. I also predicted Arsenal to come second last year, so I really know nothing about football when you look at it like that. My predictions have a bit of an iffy track record, but hey, I predicted Liverpool to win the league last year, so technically I'm a genius. Let's get all that malarkey, that preamble out of the way, and let's get on to my predictions for the 2020-21 Premier League season. Now, starting at number 20, and I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me on this, and part of me fought against doing this. Part of me fought against even putting this team in the relegation spots. However, I thought about it and I thought, realistically, I just can see this team going in that direction, and that's West Ham. Now, a lot of you will be thinking, what, West Ham? Last place? Are you serious? And yeah, I am. And I think this is one that you always get one of those teams that get relegated regardless of their quality. Because what happens, especially frequently now, is one or two of the teams that get relegated are because they're the worst two teams in the league. And then there's usually at least one team where the players just play below themselves and there's a really negative aura around the club. And that's why they go down, not because the players are necessarily not good enough, but because the whole situation around the club is causing the players to underperform, and you get a miserable state of affairs, which results in a team's relegation from the Premier League. And that's kind of what I'm predicting for West Ham. A number of factors here. I just think their signings have just been so poor recently. West Ham are the worst team to predict, because in other years I've always predicted them to do well, purely based on their signings. And like last year they signed Sebastian Haller, and Fornals is another one, and they really made me think, wow, West Ham could actually do something. But conveniently they didn't. They were just as bad as before and just survived relegation, just like the previous year. Now, that's quite a tough act. West Ham consistently signed bad players, consistently change their manager, and consistently underperform. Is David Moyes the man who's going to rebirth West Ham? I don't think so. I get the wisps of David Moyes' time at Sunderland, and I just feel like they're going to be in a relegation battle. And they haven't really signed anyone this year either, and it's a very weak squad in my opinion. When you've got all these players that consistently underperform, and you don't sign any more players, I just can't see ending well for West Ham. And especially look at the Grady D and Garner situation, where you've got Mark Noble, the club captain, publicly saying that he disagreed with the board's decision to sell that player. I mean, that's just pure signs of a club that's on a downward spiral. It's got clashes inside, and clearly there's something wrong with the club. If Mark Noble is publicly saying that, clearly there's something going on at the club between the players, between the manager, between the owners. And that is a problem, and that is why I think West Ham will go down, because their players consistently underperform. They haven't really made any signings. David Moyes isn't the person who's going to bring the glory back to West Ham. He's just not a good enough manager at this stage in his career, in my opinion. And the inner turmoil in the club, just summed up by the Grady Diangana situation, has really made me think that things are just clearly going wrong at the club. And I'll be honest, unless they get more positivity around the club, I can see this being the year where the negativity surrounding the club finally topples them and finally sends them down. Now, in number 19, I've gone for Aston Villa, and this is probably more of a popular decision. I just don't really see Villa doing much this year. They survived by the skin of their teeth last year. They realistically should have gone down. And I just don't see as if there's much quality in this team, I'll be honest. They leak so many goals and barely score any goals, this Villa team, and they spent a lot of money last year and it really didn't pay off. Most of the players they signed last year just really didn't do anything, especially the big money ones. You look at players like Wesley and Samata. Two strikers they signed barely netted any goals between them. That's a problem, and I think that has been kind of the reason why they haven't spent so much this year. But then you look at that again, they haven't really fixed the areas. They signed Matty Cash from Nottingham Forest, who'll certainly be an improvement in the fullback areas. But I just don't see him really changing the side. They've also signed Ollie Watkins, so he's going to be a good signing if he can get it running in the Premier League. And he obviously knows Dean Smith. That could be a very good signing. He could be the one who turns the tide. However, personally, I just don't see this Villa side really having much quality besides Grealish and maybe John McGinn. Obviously, Ollie Watkins could come in and do something, but that's mainly down to the fact of if he acclimatises to the league or not. That's a big if. And you've got people like Wesley and Samata, and I'm just kind of thinking, why are they still at the club? Because clearly they're not in favour. It's a bit of a shambles of a Villa squad, to be honest. I think they could do something, but naturally I don't really rate Dean Smith as a manager. I'm surprised he's still in the job, and I just don't rate many of the players there. I don't think they've really tried to improve too many of their areas. Yeah, they've signed Ollie Watkins, but they still lack a lot of creativity in that squad, and they're still quite weak defensively. So I think they've struggled to patch up the holes which nearly got them relegated last year, and I don't think they'll have quite as many opportunities to stay up as they did last year. They should have gone down last year, and they just got a lot of luck, and a lot of teams underperformed. Realistically, on their form, they should have gone down, and I think that this year will seal their fate. I think this claret and blue side will, along with West Ham, be going down. Now, we've already had two claret and blue sides, and I'm going for a third. In number 18th, I'm not going with Burnley. That was a weird misdirect. I don't even know why I did that. Yeah, Fulham is the team I'm picking for number 18th. I watched the playoff final, and I just don't see much from this Fulham side, I'll be honest. The problem is a couple of years ago when they were here under Jokanovic, they signed far too many players. They essentially tried to build a whole new squad, and none of those players gelled. And they conceded so many goals, didn't score many, and they went down naturally. No one could save them, not even Claudio Ranieri. And they've kind of gone in the opposite direction. Scott Parker hasn't really strengthened the squad at all. That's weird to me, because you look at that squad, it's not that strong. Especially when you look at a lot of these players were either the weaker players on paper from their Premier League campaign, or players that I just don't really see as being good enough for the Premier League. And yeah, they didn't really offer much in that playoff final which I watched. They had to get Joe Bryan to score the goals. They didn't offer much going forward. I don't think there's a lot of creativity in that side. I think that's similar to Villa in the sense that I just don't see where the goals are coming from. Alexander Mitrovic, from what I've seen, didn't even score that many goals in the Championship last year, and he's the man they're relying on for all their goals. You've got Ivan Cavallero, he's a good player. Bobby Reed is okay. I've never really seen much from him at the top level. Did practically nothing with Cardiff a couple of years ago. I just don't see the quality, and they seem to be making a couple of signings. They haven't really signed anyone, which is why I've put them so low. Have they linked with Kenny Tete and Areola, and he'll certainly be a good signing for them. Some stability in goal. And if they make those signings, then maybe I'll have a different outlook. But I'm recording on Wednesday the 9th of September, so any signings that haven't happened after that, I'm just letting you know, because naturally I can't enforce it. I don't know what transfers are going to be happening. So if there are any transfers that happen that I haven't mentioned, probably because they didn't happen on the time of recording. I just don't see much from this Fulham side. I think they're going to be a bit like Cardiff a couple of years ago, whereas everyone thought they'd finish bottom. I don't think so. I think they will have a little bit about them. They will try and stay up, however, I just don't think they can. I just don't think they've got the quality. There's nothing really special about this Fulham front side. I think they're quite lucky to get promoted, and the lack of signings they've made to improve the squad, I can see why Scott Parker's done this way. He's trying to not fall into the mistakes that Fulham made a couple of years ago under Jokanovic, but they haven't really found a happy medium. And I think they're going into the Premier League with easily the weakest squad in the league. And while I don't think they'll finish bottom, because I just think there are a couple of clubs that will just be in worse form than them, I don't think they have the quality to stay up. Now, 17th, and this is another unpopular one, I've gone for Crystal Palace. Now, a lot of people will be like, well, why have you gone for Crystal Palace? I just don't really see much from this side, I'll be honest. They were awful after the restart. I just don't see much from this Palace side. They're incredibly safe. They haven't changed much in the last few years. I just don't see where the goals are coming from. They really didn't create much last year. And Wilfried Zaha clearly doesn't want to be at the club. He didn't even have that good a season last year. He's not even in good form. I can't see him really being the man to save Palace. And other than that, they haven't made too many signings. Nathan Ferguson, Eberechi Eze are okay signings, but there's always the question of whether they're acclimatised to the league. I just don't see them scoring a lot of goals, and that's a problem. And I think Roy Hodgson, I just don't really think he is a great manager for Palace at this stage. He's got a little to no ambition, and they've been steady. They've been steady, but when you're steady, you're static, and they've been pretty complacent these last couple of years, not really making too many changes to the side. And I think that'll be their downfall, because they haven't really changed. They've been staying the same, and seeing as Zaha doesn't want to stay here, Roy Hodgson is clearly past his prime as a manager. I just can't see there being the same enthusiasm for Palace this year. Part of me wanted to put them in the relegation spots. I did actually in an early draft of my list. However, I just think they're better than Fulham. And I don't think they are going to be in quite the same turmoil as something like West Ham. So I think they'll have a pretty bad season by their standards. It'll go pretty wrong for them. I don't see the goals. I don't see the enthusiasm. But I think they have just enough quality to survive the drop. But next season, I think, will be the bigger one. In 16th, I've gone for Newcastle, and there's quite a big gap between Newcastle and Crystal Palace, I think. Crystal Palace downwards, I think, are going to be the ones involved in the relegation battle. The ones up, I think, will be relatively safe. I just don't see, again, the quality from Newcastle. Their squad is quite low in quality. They've made a couple of good signings. I think Wilson and Fraser are some good captures from Bournemouth, but can they hit it running? You've got to think that you've signed these from Bournemouth, a team that really struggled to create anything last year, which is why they went down. We know Callum Wilson can score goals, but he didn't really do much last year. So, again, a lot of the signings for a lot of these clubs is all about, can they? Because we know a lot of them, they've got it in their locker, but can they hit the ground running? I think that's what's so important for a lot of these clubs. Jamal Lewis is a really good signing for Newcastle. I was a bit annoyed Liverpool didn't sign him, but yeah, he'll be a good left-back addition for Newcastle. I just think that there seems to be a lack of ambition for Newcastle. Steve Bruce is naturally not going to be the most ambitious manager. I think that their signings could be good, however I still think there's a lack of creativity there. So I put 60, but it's not going to be a bad season for Newcastle. I just don't really see them doing anything spectacular. Now, in 15th place, I've gone for West Brom. Now, a lot of people seem to be predicting West Brom to go down. However, I disagree. I actually think West Brom is a great example of teams that are in the Premier League for a while, and it actually does them a great benefit to get relegated. Now, obviously, West Brom been in the Premier League for ages, but they play boring football under Tony Pulis. And then they got relegated, and now they've come back up after 2 years in the Championship, and are a completely different side. They're a young attacking team, under the guise of a very good manager in Slaven Bilic. And that's what I like about West Brom. I really admire the fact that they've completely shaped and changed their side, and now a much more young, exciting attacking side. I think it's brought such a great atmosphere back to the club, and it's made West Brom a really interesting club, whereas before, I just found them really boring. And I think they'll do well. As I said, they've got a really good young side. I think players like Grady Diangana and Mateus Pereira will be really good in the Premier League. And I think they've got a really good bit of creativity in the side here. However, they haven't spent an awful amount in this transfer window. They've mainly been buying back the players out on loan last season, which is good. Those players were very good for them. However, I do think they maybe need a couple more signings before the season starts, which is why I put them in 15th, because I think they'll survive and they'll be reasonably good this season, but I don't think they'll be perfect. I think they'll be a bit similar to Brighton last year, where they played nice football, but they still lost a few games. I don't think their squad is quite good enough to really do something special this year, but I think they'll survive reasonably comfortably, and I think they will be a really exciting team to watch, and they're a very young, exciting side, and I do think they'll be very similar to Brighton last year. They won't set the world alight, but they'll just be very nice to watch. Speaking of Brighton, in 14th place, I've gone for the Seasiders, and yeah, I just think that Brighton will have a very similar season to before. They've brought in some good players. Adam Lallana, I think, is a brilliant signing. Unfortunately, he just never really got the game time towards the end at Liverpool, mainly down to his injuries. But you look at his form in the 2016-17 season, the same year he won England Player of the Year, he was instrumental in Klopp's season as a run-in, goal-scoring midfielder, and I hope that he can really bring that to Brighton. I just think they've got a really good side. I don't think they're perfect at Brighton. I don't think they are a perfect side, which is why they're only 14th. I think they have certain flaws. They don't score enough goals. They probably need a quality striker alongside Neil Maupay, especially since they've sent Glenn Murray on loan to Watford. However, I think that they've got a decent midfield, and I think Graham Potter, he plays a decent way, and they impressed me last season despite the fact they didn't really do amazingly. So I think just same as last season really for Brighton. I think they'll play good football, survive comfortably, but won't set the world alight, similar to West Brom. Number 13, this is going to be fairly controversial, I suppose. I've gone for Sheffield United. Now, last year, I did predict Sheffield United to go down, and that was purely on the basis that I looked at their squad and thought, this squad was like just surviving in the Championship a couple of seasons ago. It's going to get ripped apart in the Premier League, and admittedly I hadn't really seen much of Sheffield United that season. They finished second. I'd only really seen what I knew on paper, and that I thought they'd go down based upon that. However, I think everyone ate their words, and Sheffield United ultimately had an amazing season. Chris Wilder proved that he's a brilliant manager, and proved that he can construct a really good solid squad of players, and they did a bit of a Wolves. I don't think they'll do quite as well this season. I think you could tell after the restart that they didn't quite have as much enthusiasm or as much fight about them, which was the same for a few clubs. Now, that's not me saying they'll do bad. I think they'll survive comfortably and finish comfortably in mid-table, which is why I put them 13th. However, I don't think they'll be pushing for Europe like they tried to last year. I think their signings have been smart, but perhaps they could have improved slightly in more areas. I think they've got a really good squad and they'll finish comfortable. They'll be very comfortable in the league, but not quite as good as last season. However, I do think that the likes of Chris Wilder's men will be pretty decent this year. At number 12, I've gone for Burnley. Now, believe me when I say that I want Burnley to go down. I'm not a fan of Burnley, guys. I find them such a boring, frustrating team because they do the same thing every single year. They buy the same types of players, play the same negative, boring football every single year, and I just want them to go down. But credit where credit is due to Sean Dyche. It works. It absolutely works. They finish comfortably, season in, season out. They did pretty well last year, and they've not got a great squad. They don't play great football yet. Somehow they're always comfortable at Burnley. They always finish comfortably, and as much as I really like to predict them to go down, I just can't, because I can't see Burnley going down while Sean Dyche is at the club. I really can't, because he's got a system, he's got a formula there, and somehow, and I don't quite know how, I'll be honest, I have no idea how it works, but it works. It shouldn't, but it does, and Burnley are comfortable every single year, week in, week out. And I think it's going to stay that way, and believe me when I say I want nothing more than Burnley to exit the league, but unfortunately, it just doesn't seem like it's going to happen. I'm not going for what I want to happen, I'm going for what I think will happen, and as much as I want Burnley to go down, realistically, I just don't think they will. I think they will just finish comfortably mid-table. Number 11, I've gone for Leeds. Now, I do predict that this Leeds team will do better than the other two promoted sides. And I was tempted to think they maybe could have done a bit of a Wolves or a bit of a Sheffield United. I'm not going that far. I think they'll finish comfortably mid-table, comfortably away from the relegation fight. I think that Marcelo Bielsa's clearly got this Leeds team playing good football. I've just been very impressed by their signings, I'll be honest. Rodrigo will hopefully transform that midfield. I think he's a very good signing. And Robin Koch as well, I think, is a solid centre-backer. He's an alumni from my Peterborough Road to Glory on FIFA 19. He was a very good CDM slash centre-back in that career mode I did. And I think he's be a very good signing for Leeds. Unfortunately, they missed out on Ben White. However, I just see this Leeds team being very strong, and they have not been in the Premier League for so long that this team will really want to make a stamp. Marcelo Bielsa will want to make a stamp, and yeah, I can see this Leeds team being a very exciting side, and I think they'll easily be the strongest out of the newly promoted sides, mainly just down to the confidence this team seems to have, and just the personnel of this squad I think is easily the best out of those three teams. So yeah, I do think Leeds will actually have a pretty good season, and I think they'll just be very comfortable. Just miss out on the top half of the table. I just think they've been very smart with their signings, and I just think they've got a very good squad, and really will be trying to make a mark on their first season back in the Premier League and absolutely yonks, and I think that job they will fulfill. Number 10, again this is a bit of a controversial one, but I've gone with Southampton. Now, people seem to constantly mark Southampton down, however, I really admire Southampton as a side. You go back to when they lost 9-0 to Leicester last year, and everyone thought they were relegated, everyone thought Hasenhüttl was out, yet admirably, Hasenhüttl got them playing well, and they finished 13th. So comfortable, they weren't even involved in a relegation fight. Danny Ings was on fire, and I have so much respect for Hasenhüttl as a manager because he clearly knows how to get the best out of his side. I really like the kind of tight-knit, young squad Hasenhüttl seems to be creating. He's got rid of a lot of the deadwood, and he brought in a lot of young, exciting players. Kyle Walker-Peters is a really good high potential right back, obviously from Tottenham. And Mohamed Salisu from Real Valladolid is a really good young centre-back as well. What I really admire about Southampton is that they make the kind of signings you do on a FIFA career mode, you know, young, promising players with high potentials. And this isn't just me saying this because both Walker-Peters and Salisu are very good on FIFA. I always thought they'd complete a trio because they're heavily linked with Weston McKennie. And if he signed, I may have put these guys even a little bit higher. I haven't, but I think they've just got a very good young squad, and Danny Ings has guaranteed goals. James Ward-Prowse is really good in midfield, so yeah, I think they'll have a pretty good season. I really like Hasenhüttl as a manager as well. So yeah, I think they will make the top 10. I really like Southampton as a side. In number 9, a controversial like the Southampton one, but for a different reason, I've gone with Everton. Now, everyone seems to be predicting that Everton are going to do massive things this year. And I'll be honest, I just can't see it. And it's just the same old Everton thing, where they sign a good few players, you think, will they get in Europe this year? And they just finish around mid-table. Now, Carlo Ancelotti is clearly a good manager. I'm not disputing that. And they made some very good signings. Alan is a very good signing from Napoli. I think Decore is a bit of savvy business, and James Rodriguez, if you can get him playing well, it will be insane for Everton, but it's all about whether you can get him playing well, because James Rodriguez hasn't just rocked up at Everton. He wouldn't be there if he was still a quality player, let me remind you. He's only going there because he can't get in any top sides anymore. But if he does perform, obviously James Rodriguez will be insane for Everton, but it's all about that if. And him going to Everton, clearly he's not in the form of his life right now, but maybe he could recapture it. I just look at that Everton side, and apart from these midfield signings, I just don't see a lot being offered from Everton, I'll be honest. I think they're quite weak defensively. And yeah, I just don't see a lot from this side. And Carlo Ancelotti didn't really do much. He had half a season at Everton last year. He didn't really do much. He wasn't really any better than Marco Silva. So I think that they'll be a good selfish mid-table comfortably. But despite the good signings they've made, I just can't see them doing any better than that. Number 8, I've gone for Leicester. And I really wanted to put these guys higher. Leicester here at number 8, and the team in 6th place I was constantly flicking towards. I thought, is it that team 6th or is it Leicester? And ultimately I've decided to put Leicester in 8th place here. Mainly just down to the fact that they just weren't very good after the restart. They were very, very poor and unfortunately missed out on top 4 football. They've lost Ben Chilwell, and even though I don't think he was a key mechanism in their squad, they're just on a bit of a downward spiral. However, Leicester naturally have a good team. They've got a good squad. We know that. They wouldn't have been in the top 4 for most of last season if they didn't. Brendan Rodgers is a very good manager. I think they'll finish comfortably top half. However, I just can't see that same enthusiasm being there from the players. They played a little bit above themselves last year. I just can't see them doing it again. However, I am very well prepared to eat my words on this because I would like them to do well. However, I think they will still do a good job. However, they just won't repeat the heroics from last year, in my opinion, just because the momentum and the enthusiasm isn't quite there. And they haven't really signed anyone, which is an issue. You always need to be building on your squad, and Leicester have only really signed a replacement from Ben Chilwell, when realistically I think they could have improved in other areas. So yeah, they're lacking the momentum from last year, and I think they'll do fine, but they just won't do as well. They won't repeat the heroics. In 7th place, I've gone for Tottenham. Now, I'll be honest, I can't see this being a good season for Tottenham. I look at that team, and I just don't see much being offered from Tottenham. They've got a pretty poor squad, one of the weaker Tottenham sides we've seen in recent years. Son is a very good player, Moira is a very good player, Bergvin is on the up, Dele Alli's good where he wants to, Kane scores goals, but he doesn't offer much. Defensively, they seem quite poor. Matt Doherty is a very good right back, but he's very attacking. Højbjerg, I've never really seen anything from him, I'll be honest. So he's an okay signing, but he's not going to set the world alight. And I'll be honest, I can't see Jose Mourinho being there by the end of the season. He just didn't impress me too much coming in last year. He didn't do much better than Poch. And I just don't rate the Tottenham side. I think that their squad just isn't good enough in my opinion. And I don't think Jose Mourinho is the one who's going to turn it around. So I think it's going to be a pretty mediocre season for Tottenham. And I can see another managerial change happening by the end of this current season. So yeah, I don't see him getting in the top 6. I think it's going to be another disappointing season for Tottenham fans by their standards. Number 6, and this was the team that I was umming and ahhing about changing with Leicester. I was constantly flicking through them. However, I have decided on this team over Leicester, and that's Wolves. Now, I love Wolves. I love Nuno Espirito Santo. I think he's such a good manager. He's achieved so much. I love this Wolves side. I love what they can do. And I just think you saw that they finished back-to-back 7th place. They finished 7th place last year. And despite the fact they were in the Europa League. So, what could this Wolves team do without the burden of the Europa League? I think they can actually get into the top 6. They've got such a good side. You look at people like Ruben Neves, Diogo Jota, Adama Traore, Raul Jimenez is always banging in a goal. He's a prolific striker. And their back 3 is solid. Connor Cody and Willy Bolly are excellent. Johnny is a very good left back. My only concern is they haven't really replaced Doherty at time of recording. There are rumours about Maitland-Niles, however they haven't gone in for him. I don't think they're likely to now. So, but that's obviously off the cards. They need to replace Doherty because I don't think Ruben Vinagre, I mean, he's not even a natural right back, so I wouldn't be too comfortable with him playing there. However, apart from that, they've kept their side mostly together, which is a really big achievement for Nuno and his Wolves team. I think they just need to keep on pushing. They've made some decent signings. I think that Silva kid is a really good signing. A bit much to spend on a backup striker, but I think he's very clearly very young and has got a lot left in him. So yeah, I think without the burden of Europa League, I just would love to see how far this Wolves team can go, because they're clearly a very tight-knit, focused squad with a lot of quality. I rate them quite a lot. I think Nuno's one of the best managers in the league, and yeah, I'm very excited for this Wolves side, so that's why I put them 6th. Maybe a bit generous, part of me thinks that maybe they can't do it, but, I mean, I think they will be better than Tottenham, so ultimately they're going to go 6th. Number 5, I've gone with Arsenal, and no, I don't think they're going to get in the top 4. I still don't think this Arsenal side is strong enough for that. I think they're quite weak in certain areas. However, they've clearly got momentum after winning the FA Cup and the Community Shield. They've got some good players. If Aubameyang signs, because he hasn't signed at time of recording, then he'll naturally be good as he always is for Arsenal. They've improved the defence. I think Gabriel, they bought him from Lille, the same place as Nicolas Pepe, and see what Nicolas Pepe turned out like. So he could be a flop, but hopefully he will be good in them for defence. William Saliba's a very exciting prospect for them. And yeah, I just think that they've improved in the forward areas. I think Willian will be a good signing. And yeah, I just think that Arsenal, Mikel Arteta, I do see him doing some very interesting things with this Arsenal side. I don't think they've got enough quality to finish in the top 4, but I do see this rebuild coming on quite nicely. And yeah, while I don't think they have that quality, I think Mikel Arteta is going in the right direction, and he is improving the squad. And this Arsenal squad is definitely better than the one that started last season. So yeah, I don't think they'll get in the top 4, but I think they'll probably finish comfortably 5th. And 4th, I've gone for Manchester United, and as much as I don't want them to, they are easily the 4th best team in the league. I think they've made a couple of good signings. Donny van de Beek is a good signing. A bit of a question over whether they really needed him, but he is a very good signing, and I think they got him for a very good price. Jadon Sancho hasn't signed for time of recording. I don't know if he will. If he is, then naturally it'll be a good signing, but I'm still doubtful of whether that's actually going to happen, and so a lot of people, so I don't know. But they are naturally got a good young squad to have. Man United, Paul Pogba looks like he's staying there. I wouldn't have called that. halfway through last season they'd still be here, but if he's committed and he wants to play, he's naturally an asset for Man United. Bruno Fernandes was brilliant for them last year, so naturally he'll probably keep up his form. And you've got the likes of Rashford and Martial, who are good in-form young players. So yeah, as much as I wouldn't like them to, I think Man United, yeah, they have a pretty good squad, and to be fair to Ole, he has been building on this and bringing in some very good players. He's been building on their weaknesses. So yeah, I do actually rate Man United, and that's why I put them fourth. They don't have an amazing squad. It's not as good as the next three teams. However, I think they're easily the fourth best team in the league, and Ole's a bit similar to Arteta, apart from the fact that I think Man United's squad is a little bit better and their signings have been more high profile. Ole's clearly building something, and I doubted if he was the man for the job before, but he's clearly going in a direction, and yeah, I think Man United will finish fourth fairly comfortably. Now I've got third, and this is probably another controversial one. I've gone for Chelsea. Now, it can't be denied that Chelsea have had the best transfer window of everyone. I mean, they just have. The amount of players they've signed has been mental. Hakim Ziyech, Timo Werner, Ben Chilwell, Kai Havertz, Thiago Silva, Malang Sarr. Mental. The amount of money they've spent in a COVID world, let us not forget, is absolutely insane. Roman Abramovich is clearly just threw the money bags at Frank and says, just get whatever player you want. And he clearly has. You can't deny they brought in some incredible quality, especially Timo Werner. I'm very excited to see what he'll be like in the Premier League. However, I don't think they'll be anywhere near the league. I think they could be a light challenge. However, I don't think they'll win in the league. And that's because they brought in a lot of good players, don't get me wrong. However, it takes time for players to settle in, it takes time for players to gel together. And Fulham found this a couple of years ago, Aston Villa found this last year. So when you buy a lot of new players, it can take a while for them to settle in, especially when they're all first-team players, which is what Chelsea have done. And I'm not denying the quality of these players, but it's undeniable, at least two of them, at least one of them won't hit the mark. That's undeniable. They won't all be home runs. So I think that it takes a lot of time for gel, and all these players seem to be first team players, apart from Malang Sarr. So yeah, if he's playing them, it will take a lot of time for these players to gel and to really work together. And you need to let that period of embedding, you need to allow that. So maybe this season after, I can see Chelsea maybe even challenging and maybe even winning the league. Obviously guaranteed on if they do well this season. But I see them being good this year, undoubtedly. They've signed some incredible players, but these players need to gel together. You shouldn't expect them to be winning the league this season, because I just think it's unlikely. Signed a lot of players, but also they're not a team as of yet, and they need to build on that. Number 2, I've gone for Manchester City, and you guys all know what number 1 is. You're all going to call me biased, but let's talk about Manchester City in second place. Now, naturally, this City side is very good, isn't it? And no one can deny how good this City side is. They are incredibly good on their day, and I think Pep has actually tried to improve the side in certain areas. I think Nathan Ake is a good signing at centre-back. I'm still waiting out on Koulibaly. I don't know if they'll sign him if they don't, but I think Nathan Ake is still a pretty good option at the back. Ferran Torres is a very good player. I would have liked Liverpool to sign him, just down to the fact he can play on the wing and as a centre forward. I mean, it would have been great backup for Bobby Firmino, let's be honest, but he's playing at City, he'll be good depth. They haven't signed too many players of City, but that's because their squad's very good. I think defensively they definitely need to strengthen, and they kind of had. Koulibaly will put the icing on the cake, but naturally you can't deny the quality Manchester City have, and I think they will try and focus on the Champions League. They obviously missed out to Lyon last year. Embarrassing, really. I remember watching that. I was on holiday. Embarrassing result for Manchester City. Pep will really be trying to do something this year, and God knows they'll have to focus on it, and they will be focusing on that. However, I still think they can push Liverpool the wire. I was really torn about who was going to win the league. I'm still not confident on the team I picked. I think it could go all the way. I don't think it's going to be like last year. No one team is going to run away with it. However, it will be incredibly close. However, I do think Liverpool will triumph overall. So let's go to number 1, Liverpool. Am I biased? Yes. Is this more of a hope and less of a what I think will happen? Absolutely. Of course it is. Absolutely. It's so close. I honestly couldn't call who would win the league. So ultimately, I went for hope. When it all fails, I was going to go for Liverpool. And I just think that this team, I mean, they won the league last year. It's a very good team. And you look at what Klopp has installed, this mentality of always bouncing back, always achieving things. I think that this team will be really up for trying to win the league again. Now, naturally, the hunger won't be there. The same hunger won't be there. As much as I'd like it to be, it's just physically impossible. It can't be. Once Jordan Henderson gets his hands on the Premier League trophy, he's naturally not going to have the same motivation to pick it up a second time. Like, even if he would want to, that naturally can't happen. Or if they kept the same squad together, and Jurgen Klopp, man, he can get anything out of these players. These players can perform anything for this guy, and naturally I think the same fight will be up for it. I think it'll be incredibly close. However, I just think Liverpool will triumph, and they haven't signed too many players. I think Thiago would be a really good signing. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. The Sark's been rambling on all window, man, but hopefully they sign him. They haven't quite signed as much backup as I would have liked. A backup striker and backup centre back is what I really would have hoped. They haven't quite achieved that. So I do think there are still signings left, and obviously Thiago I would still like. However, I just think that Liverpool have the slight edge over Man City, although it's incredibly close. And is this bias? Is this more of hope rather than what I actually think? Of course it is. It's that close that of course I'm going to go with my heart here. However, in my heart, I just think Liverpool can do it again, and I really hope they can. And yeah, that's why I'm going for Liverpool. As much as I may look stupid for this, I'm going for Liverpool. I'm going with my heart here. And I predicted Liverpool to win the 2020-21 Premier League season. So yes, thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, drop a sub, and hit that notification bell to stay notified of all my latest videos. And I really hope you enjoyed this video. Obviously another football video, but I know there's a little bit of an audience for that. So I hope you guys all enjoyed, and I hope you enjoyed this predictions video. I hope I haven't embarrassed myself too much with my hot takes. And if you yourself enjoy predictions, put yours in the comments section below. I'd be really interested to hear it. And if you have some interesting thoughts on mine and I had a few hot takes, write down in the comments what you thought about my predictions. I'd be really glad to hear your feedback. And if you enjoy this style of video or want to see more football videos, again drop it down in the comments section, because I'd really be interested to hear your thoughts. But thank you guys for watching, and of course, a goodbye.